People are still talking about the box. Yeah, even though I kind of already wanted to drop it. What are we talking about? Box legality, Crimson Blur, pros and cons. Although I think this is a terrible place to do it. I kind of already tried to drop it, and then I wanted to talk about Puff stalling and timing out. Give me a quick summary. The conversation initially started about me talking about my conversation with Hacks, where we had essentially like an hour and a half longer conversation about what it means, or the impacts of having a box-style controller, or the box specifically, I should say, the box specifically, and the implications on ledge dashing, more specifically with space animals, but also just with other characters as well. So we talked about the implications, and Hacks conceded at the end that is most likely not easier to do, but more consistent, especially not to SD when doing a ledge dash on the box than it is with a GameCube controller, but it is much more consistent to lose 1 frame every time you do that ledge dash. You lose 1 frame gallant, and to him that's an equal trade-off. Or he says it's maybe even worse of a trade-off to get that 1 less gallant frame. Get Blur on a call, make that content, Avery. I concede that there's a slight consistency advantage, albeit consistently 1 less frame of gallant. That's the gist of the discussion. That's what Hack said. So he concedes there's a slight consistency advantage, albeit consistently 1 frame less gallant. When I said, so what I said is, so you're sacrificing distance for gallant frames if he wants to get like the best one. And he says, the 1 frame gallant is better. I said that not having 1 frame gallant, I don't see how this affects anything practical though. And he says, it's huge, dude. Amplifies the strength of you being on the ledge, which is like a pretty general, broad thing to say. And I've said, I'm not saying that's not, I'm just trying to understand. He says, to put it in perspective, then he listed a lot of things that are 1 frame, which are completely non-sequitur. And I said, I'm just failing to see how it would practically affect with an opponent in the corner pressuring you, which is a situation that we had previously set up. If a person's trying to hit you coming off of the ledge, so your opponent's pressuring you in the corner, and you just ledge dash, I don't understand the practical differences between having a 15 frame gallant or 14, but I'll think about it more for sure. I do have to get going though. And then he listed some stuff about like doing things out of shield and how 1 frame being 1 frame faster out of shield, but that's a very different situation, which again is a non sequitur. And then he said I can concede that there's a slight consistency advantage, although a consistently 1 frame less gallant. So that was how the conversation ended. Real talk, Ginger, since you brought it up, I would actually call in if you want. Sure, man. You want to talk? Call Blur. Okay. Let me, I'll whisper you my Discord info.
Yeah, everyone's saying it's better. That's good. So we can talk about whatever you want. We can talk about boxes. I don't know. Just Smash in general.
Yeah.
Anyways, I just want to talk to my good friend Ginger. Make a little,
I feel you,
like you're one of the only streamers I haven't gone on to, and I feel like it's an obligation for trying to make melee content out there. The Blur bump does help everyone out there.
Oh, the Blur bump. Do you know about the Colbert bump?
Yes, that's where it came from. I shamelessly stole the Colbert bump, and I call it the Blur bump. That's basically the whole theme.
I love it. Yeah, we can talk about boxes a little bit. I don't think that necessarily either of us are like able to go into specifics too much, but like
I think I'm gonna call myself the 3rd or maybe 4th most qualified person in the world to talk about boxes.
Okay, that's sick.
And yet I am still patently unqualified. That's what I'd say. Which is I've now sat in on. I probably worked on it for like I don't know over 100 hours, and there's so many. It's
complicated.
It's complicated, and I did it like a year ago. The funniest thing about the whole thing is that a ton of work was done in the background by mostly me, Nintendo, and Aziz with like just calls and talking about it. A lot of documentation got made, and the most weird thing about it is that we just never released most of it because people just seemed to stop caring, and the issue sort of went away, and we soft legalized it like kind of everywhere. And the only person who was really using it was Hacks, and he'd agreed to like use those limitations, and it sort of just went away on its own. And I think some of it was released in terms of Nintendo putting it on, I think, the SmashCon rule set, but otherwise it's just like a device used by such a small number of people that making larger sweeping changes and complicating a rule set for it almost felt ridiculous at a point, because things we had were like, oh, we'd make like a controller subcommittee, which would like look over each new version of, a box or whatever. And then we're like, why is appoint people to a job that like controls like so few people's
like 5 people or whatever that are actually like competing regularly or whatever.
Yeah, so that's actually what ended up happening. It's like real talk. We just at some point people weren't mad about it anymore. No one cared anymore, and so we were like, well, if no one cares, then what the fuck are we doing here? Why are we spending more time on it?
Here's
a full rule set was made around it.
Yeah, right. Here's something that's like kind of related, but like not necessarily to the box thing. I think that the Smash scene is actually pretty bad at handling multiple issues at once. Like something that I like to talk about, like people will say to me like, well, what matters more right now, like if you're talking about this, why wouldn't you just talk about this more important thing? And I'm like, well, you can talk about 2 issues and try to solve them at the same time. But I think that the Smash scene in particular is like really bad at doing that. They like see Wobbling, they're like, that's gotta go. And they spend like a week on that, and then like something either happens or it doesn't, and then they're pissed about the next thing, and then Wobbling's gone. They don't need to talk about that anymore. Like, I don't know. Do you feel the same way?
You made an excellent tweet not that long ago about how people are influencers, and they call themselves that basically, but they don't take the responsibility of that influence. And I mean, sure, there's a lot of negativity right now that is undeniable, and I think we're bouncing around from issue to issue because we're seeing our game decline. And it's declined now for a good year and a half-ish. And so people are mad, right?
Right.
And that makes sense. And they're pointing fingers, right? Someone made this analogy. It wasn't me. But in a way, it's not so different than when people, scapegoat different things in politics, right? Like it's
right.
It must be the ice climbers' fault, right? It's got to be those guys. Or the immigrants. What's the difference, right? But the truth is that we've had Wobbling legal for like a really long time, and it's not what's causing the decline of the game. It legitimately isn't, and there's a lot of complex factors that are causing it. It takes some nuance and thought to think about it, though, but you can't just scapegoat any one thing. And certainly, I think the process of which has been done has been really frustrating for me to see. Both Wobbling or generally like how everyone's just jumping from one rules thing to another. It's I think people just understand the power of their social and their Twitter now, and it's just become a big politics game.
I agree. I kind of think that people are clout chasing, like when they call themselves influencers or whatever, right? And they just like I can't stand the most recent Leffen tweets where he's like just spouting off like how terrible rule sets are, and he won't attend tournaments unless they abide by like certain rules, or like you can't make me enter that shit. It's like, this literally doesn't even affect you. Like, you don't play Puff or Ice Climbers. Like, you're never gonna time out like that. I don't understand. And so he just makes these big sweeping things about how shitty Melee is and how bad the tournament was. And it's like, you need to like realize the impact that you're having on like the people who are trying to like drink in this information, or like think about the tournament in a cool way. Like, I don't know. So that definitely bothers me, but yeah, I don't know. And
and the reality is that like Battle BC Finals was sick.
Yeah.
Axis doing some crazy stuff. I don't know what people are like. I don't know if the people's eyes are correct or whatever, like what's going on. But I've been around the scene for a long time. I don't think people are camping any more than normal, or like more than, frankly, it's ever been. Like 2 years ago, I think it was. Maybe it was less than that. I can't keep track of time. We saw Chu versus HBox. Before that, like there's been other sets. It's not like this has been sprinkled in of all of Melee history. It is not unique. Right. I can pull sets from 2004 that were like this. Sometimes people are bad at floating matchups, and the match looks terrible. Right. That happens, right? And look, it's very clear in that particular match, the mentalities were wrong, right? Like, I sympathize actually in so many ways with the players for trying to for trying to keep a tournament mentality, and clearly it didn't work. I think it could have been done more professionally, but emotions raged out. And And like taking it from a macro perspective, because honestly, there's a lot of blame on the actual players, right?
Mm-hmm.
More one player than the other. Actually, strictly one player, really.
Yeah.
But on a macro perspective, this is what happens when you do a rule set experimentation,
Mm-hmm.
right? Ultimately, you're going to get a subsection of the community who's mad. You're going to get something that when you experiment with the rule set, sometimes the experiment doesn't work out. And so you have to like accept that going in, and it happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
Naturally, what people are going to say is, what rule set experimentation led to this conflict? Well, I encourage you to read Fohibro's actual Twitter, where he's very clearly tilted by the Wobbling man. That's like clearly the subtext behind everything there. I don't think Wobbling, like you described in your Twitter, really stops Puff from camping at all, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it is the subtext of why an Ice Climber man can feel bad about competing in a tournament, right? That's what's happening there.
Kind of, but like, would you not agree that this was one of Fohibro's best performances of all time at a tournament?
Yeah, but I mean, how's that relevant?
Because he deserves to be upset about the Wobbling ban when he literally achieved something greater than he ever kind of has at a tournament, and like now he's upset about it because, and you like said that the Wobbling didn't really necessarily have an impact on like Puff's ability to camp Ice Climbers or maybe even the camping that happened in that set. So like, why is he upset? Like, because he's not achieving the same results or something? Because he's achieving better results, it looks like.
So let's just use his Twitter as
I haven't seen, right. So this would be great.
So let's go to it, right? Like why he would be upset. Mm-hmm. So he says, well, it's official. I've been banned from Pacific Northwest today. Can't say I'm surprised. I saw it coming, but it's disheartening to know I was purposely left out of all conversation. Everything was very hush-hush around me in regards to the Wobbling man. The actual TO says, basically disputes it right after, but and he's basically like, I was left out of a group chat, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. He feels like people are blaming, says, top players know best. There's no cutting corners when it comes to improving Smash. I see it as extremely lazy that they would rather see a character become completely unviable than put some time into learning the matchup. I put time into your character, do the same. Things like that, right?
Sure.
And when he's fighting against a Jigglypuff, the matchup that, having a big punish game, Icy's really neat, I think, wobbling against the Super Floaties, and you're getting camped out. I can see where it all turned into a perfect storm of you're pissed off, right? You are in the best run of your life. You care a lot about performing. More people are watching you right now than has ever happened in your career, and it happens to be at a tournament which bans one of the things that would help you win, right? That is the perfect storm that's happening here. Now, I'm not saying he's justified. Actually, I think in so many ways he's dealt with this as poorly as possible. Mm-hmm. But what I'm trying to say is, when trying to understand this from a leadership and a macro perspective, we should all understand that when you experiment with rule sets, and when you particularly experiment with rule sets which nerf particular characters, whether it's Ices, whether it's Puff, or whatever, you're going to have instances like this where people either lash out or they quit the game or whatever. That's like naturally going to happen.
Yeah.
So it doesn't surprise me.
I gotcha. Yeah, I just think I don't know. It sounds almost as though you're trying to like bring in justification for him, but then you said that you aren't necessarily saying that he's justified. Because like the thing is, in the set, like I don't know. I consider myself a pretty analytical person, right? When I was watching that set, I was like, this Puff isn't even playing this matchup that well, and I was like, this Ice Climber is just really not playing this matchup well. Like, in certain instances, it was very obvious that he had given up, and then certain times he would just literally walk over and charge a smash attack and like get hit almost on purpose. And it's like, it went to Blur. It went to game 5, and he was down 1 stock, and he was like, you know what? This is bullshit. I can't win. I'm literally gonna give up. Like, that blew my mind. You took him to game 5.
Neither of us learned anything from the actual melee that set, and I think. But what we can take, and I think I learned nothing about whether melee is a better or worse game with wobbling on or off from that set, or this entire experiment, which calls the question the point of doing the experiment. But what I did learn is how rules like this that are targeted at a minority can affect the mentality of players and the natural repercussions of that. Like, that's to me the learning here. Now, you guys can say, like, look, just because some dude lash out, we shouldn't take it as like justification to do this or that or the other. We shouldn't be held against that, right? Like that's like ultimatum thinking, right?
Yeah.
And I see it, right? Because you should hold people responsible for their actions, but at the same time, like you have to ask the question, like how would any of us feel if our character got nerfed to the ground, right? It wouldn't feel good. I can tell you that it wouldn't feel good. Mars couldn't grab anymore.
I think that you should be careful with your phrasing, because I think that we most likely have a disagreement in this sense, which might be fun to talk about. Because you said nerf to the ground.
Character got nerfed to the ground. That's okay.
So we can
anyone
debate.
Who says otherwise is actually, I think it's just straight wrong. It's character got nerfed to the ground.
Then how would you explain Fohebro's excellent performance? This is like, this is a
bad characters do well sometimes. Bad characters do well sometimes. It happens.
Were Ice Climbers not already a bad character, or do you think that they were high up on the tier list?
I think they're better with Wobbling. Do you not think they're better with Wobbling?
I do think that they're better with Wobbling. I just don't think.
Then they got nerfed. Then they got nerfed
to the ground.
To the fucking ground, bro.
You can't say they got nerfed to the ground. I don't even know if they changed positions on the tier list. Do you think they moved on the tier list?
I'm not the only one. Fohebro himself called them unviable after this. So you're talking about someone who plays a character at a relatively high level who thinks his character just went from viable to unviable.
Okay.
So it's really not even about what you or me think. It's actually about how the players feel.
No.
It's important. It is important.
Well, here's the thing. If he feels as though the character is unviable now, I don't think that's like that valid a thing for like me to have to consider when I'm talking about like a rule set that affects the entire community, right? Like the thing is, if the character literally isn't viable, we should define viable though. Like, what does he mean? Can't place top 8 at like a large tournament? Can't beat top 100 players? Because that's already been proven incorrect. Like, I don't know. I'm like pretty sure.
It probably means that the character now the matchups against super floaties goes far enough bad that having solo maining it becomes untenable. Now you could argue they're already bad enough, but you could also argue not, right? Like Chu is still taking games off Armada. There's Wobbles beat HBox at Evo. Like there's been plenty of cases, and the Samus Marth matchups are nowhere near as bad as they are with Wobbling on than they are otherwise.
I think these are bad examples that you gave.
I do not think they're bad examples.
We can talk about that. Give me 1 second. My sub notification is loud as fuck. Thank you. All right. I think that they're bad examples.
Why the hell do we care about Fohebro's opinion? That's the problem with this thing. Is I feel like the political grandstanding of this, like just because a dude raged, we talk about this. It's so lame, right? Like I would never even scroll through his Twitter if he didn't, pull this stunt, right?
Right.
In a way, it's super fucking lame.
Yeah.
But the reason I think it's important is because it's important to know what drove someone to this. And it's important to think of people's emotions. And we're all talking about community health and how it affects the whole community. Well, you know what? How does it affect this one dude? And how does it affect many other dudes like him who happen to play the character? You know what? Their Ice Climber feelings matter. That's all I'm saying.
I think that most people would say that they're like consequentialists, right? Or maybe that's, I don't actually know if most people are consequentialists. Like, do you understand what that means?
Go ahead, tell me.
It's we try to look at the outcomes of certain actions to determine whether or not that they're beneficial, right? Like, for example, this is something like people will fight wars. Obviously, killing is bad. Most people would agree that killing is bad, but we do it in wars for the greater good, right? There's like probably ethics committees that had to determine whether or not they were going to like bomb Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And it's like, well, if we like kill this certain amount of people, like we'll probably save the world, And like, so in that sense, the consequence of this action is
Nagasaki and Hiroshima was a horrible idea.
Yeah, it turned out to be a horrible idea.
Horrible idea.
From what I understand,
those are bad ideas, bro.
Yeah, no, I 100%. But that's just the concept I'm trying to tell you, right? Like for example, you could say that lifting weights is like it's really shitty. Your arms fucking hurt and you can't walk around and stuff. But like the consequence of doing this really shitty thing is that you either appear more attractive, you grow stronger, whatever. So like I think that most people would look at things in a pretty consequentialist way. So when you talk about like, oh, well, think about how it affects this one dude, and maybe he's really, really sad, right? But like, if the entire Melee community as a whole is a bit happier, that might just outweigh this guy feeling sad, right? And so I think that there are more
So you're talking to utilitarianism.
Yeah, utilitarianism and consequentialism are essentially the same thing. Yeah.
Here's the thing: our lives change very little when we go to a tournament with Wobbling on and off because we don't play Ice Climbers. Very little, right? But this dude gets hit hard, and so does every other Ice Climber player, right? So yes, everyone might feel a little bit better with Wobbling off or Puff ban or whatever, but you hit certain minorities hard. This is like the concept of tyranny of the majority. Generally known, usually a counter argument to mob culture and all that.
Yeah,
and I think most of us, what's going to happen here, and I think has quickly happened, is have gotten extraordinarily tired of either rule set discussions or just people complaining about the game or people pulling political stunts like this or any of the other. We don't like the fact that Twitter is deciding how our game is played. Am I wrong in that?
No, I think you're right. I would hope that like the TOs take like active thought in thinking about how this would impact the game and the emotions of the players who are affected, right? But like for every
I'm not gonna accuse anyone, but I think a lot of TOs make these sort of decisions because they know it'll get them on the front page already. It'll get people who want to be like, I'm gonna support this event because I agree.
You really think so?
I actually think I've literally heard that kind of conversation many times in the past, and that's so sad to me. It's so fucking sad to me. And so that's how decisions are being made because people are like, hey, everyone's mad about this on Twitter. If I say I'm going to be the first tournament that does it, no one's talking about my tournament otherwise. Let me get on the front page, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying I'm not naming any TOs, not saying anyone who's done this, but it happens, and this is actually why people are doing it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty upsetting then. And I think like if you were the wobbler in that situation, you're like, they're literally nerfing my character just for like clout or to like, because Twitter's like telling them that they should nerf my character. That'd feel really shitty. I understand you.
Yeah. Dude, imagine playing for years, everyone saying your results are fraudulent, the community generally being hating on your character. Every time you look at Twitch chat, people are hating on your character. Your entire social media, which is supposed to be your platform to grow your brand, is hating on you or your matches or no one's a fan of you. And then the TOs who tournaments you attend, who you probably have a personal relationship with, go ahead and nerf your character. And then you're in a consequential match. And now the best thing you have in the entire game is no longer an option for you, or else you get DQ'd. Does that feel good? Does that feel like a community you want to be a part of? Does that feel welcoming? And I care about these things because I want everyone to feel welcome. And that might seem like a ridiculous goal to be like, hey, let's try to make everyone happy. But, bro, that's the fucking job, right?
Right.
And so, no, man, I put my heart out there because I really do think that the ICs are being treated unfairly. I really think that. And I think the community's wanton disrespect for small sections of the community for their own personal benefit has totally gone off the rails. It's just gone completely off the rails.
So I think that there's a line somewhere, right? Like if I was taking away this Ice Climber's ability to like win a Super National, or if it was really going from literally a viable character, however you want to define that, although I think it should be defined, into like not viable at all, then like I'd be like, damn, that's a pretty large impact this wobbling ban had. I don't think it's like that great though. And if you're trying to like look at this in terms of like maximizing utility, you think of it like how many people like really don't like playing against wobblers? How many new people are trying to like get into the game and get wobbled at their first tournament? Or like how many people are watching Melee and they see Puff versus Ice Climbers and they're like, wow, this game seems kind of shitty. I don't understand why I would play it.
So now they look at Puff versus Ice Climbers and they're like, wow, this game's sick. Is that what they're doing? No, bro.
I think that certain other matchups are more exciting without wobbling. I don't think that like Ices versus Puff was any more exciting. I think it's like I think it was equally.
There's no data.
No, exactly. It's so hard. This is the thing I talked about in my chat earlier. Is that like we're just a community of like 20-something-year-old dudes. We can't like make these. We don't have empirical data to point towards with like unbiased studies with like control and like we don't have any of this shit. It's just like. Yeah, so I think like when you're talking about maximizing utility and like going for the overall happiness of the entire community, which is, you said that like you want every single person to feel welcome, but it's like what if everyone kind of just feels pretty bad about the state of the game because like wobbling and timeouts happen, then you'd kind of want to do something about wobbling and timeouts, right? Even if it affected like the few a little bit. The thing is, if it made them completely like unviable, they can't play a character that they've spent 10 years playing anymore, and they'll never get another top 100 win for as long as they live, and they can't win money at their locals because they used to win it, but now they're losing. Like, I guess I could see it, but I just don't think that that's the reality of the situation, right?
I think taking out wobbling nerfs. I don't understand how anyone
No,
can think otherwise.
I would say that it doesn't nerf them.
The character hard, but not small. It's hard. It really hurts them very hard.
What certain okay.
It turns entire matchups like to completely around. Like it's very very bad.
I need to know. Okay. So like, do you know Michael the Puff?
Yes.
You know he's never lost to an Ice Climbers?
That's a wonderful stat.
Like, he wasn't top 100. Wobbling was legal the whole time. Like, I honestly don't think that, like...
So let's make the matchup harder for them? I mean, what are you trying to say?
I don't think it makes it any harder. I don't think it makes it harder at all.
I think it makes the Samus and Marth matchups, which are often 50-50 matchups, and not actual in reality.
Do you concede the point that the Puff matchup doesn't change then? Because you pivoted.
No, I think the Puff matchup gets worse. It goes from like a 70-30 to a fucking 90-10.
I think it's
really, really bad.
I think it's almost exactly the same.
No, it doesn't. How is
I think the problem with Puff and Peach is that you, dude, I told you that I could literally go through that set of Fohiro versus whatever the fuck his name was, Chango. I could go through that set and count the amount of grabs that happened that would have led to a guaranteed wobble, and like.
Let's please not use that set as like an example of what Icy's Puff should be.
I'm down.
It's just not.
Okay.
Let's just not use that. That is not a good way. But I guarantee you, if you look at some set, even like let's say we take HBox Chew. How many wobbles did Chew get on HBox? I guarantee you it's not 0.
Do you think that Hungrybox was playing optimally? Also, I think the circumstances of that set were really shitty. I think that
now the circumstances of this set are shitty, but the Fohiro and Chango
you're allowed to say I didn't go into it, right? I'm not going to count. I can see that it might not have been the best set, but like the problem is that we don't really have that many sets where like Ice Climbers couldn't wobble and Puff can still do its thing. So like what set do you want me to pick?
The first stock of DreamHack Austin 2017 was a wobble by Chudat. From a Chudat versus Hungrybox.
Okay, that didn't answer my question.
I'm just going through the VOD. Like, let me see what the next stock he takes.
I want to watch Michael versus Ice Climbers right now, and I'll count.
God bless your soul, dude.
Let's go look at. I know this is really like the grunt work that people have to do. I want to go look at Michael versus Drunk Sloth from Full Bloom 3 or 4 or whatever the fuck.
Michael versus Drunk Sloth is higher level and better example of how the matchup should be played than Chew versus HBox U at a grand finals. I have no idea.
I think that if Michael played Army right now, I think he'd fucking destroy him with wobbling, legal or illegal. The problem is that I don't have sets to point to.
Michael is better than Hungrybox in the matchup.
Yes, 100%.
Oh my god.
Like almost guaranteed. Oh, Michael did 3-0 Army the last time they played. 3-1. Sorry, I don't know if I said 3-0. So I can hear you like. Anyway,
I'm going through the fucking match right now.
I know. So like, I don't know. I don't have a set to point to.
Fourth stock of game 1 should have been a wobble. He messed up the wobble.
Are we sure about that? Could he have pre-mashed or no?
No, it should have been a wobble. So
it was guaranteed.
That's
okay.
2 of half of the stocks. Half.
Wait.
Versus HBox could have been wobbles.
Who won the set?
1 game. HBox did, of course.
So it didn't even change the outcome.
Oh my god, Ginger! You cannot actually. That's not how your brain could actually work.
Wait. Okay. Then explain it to me.
You're saying we're talking about matchup percentages, right?
Mm-hmm. Who wins or loses at the end?
Puff wins regardless. But I'm saying this tool makes the matches either closer or helps Ice Climbers win.
I think it's almost negligible.
How is that possible? It's a death grab.
I think that if both players are playing well, and you'd assume that
They don't. Why are you assuming that? Melee has never been played well in history.
Because it's so fucking easy. Michael doesn't lose to Ice Climbers. It's easy.
Oh my god. I guarantee you, if wobbling is kept on, Michael will once in his career lose to an Ice Climber player. But if it's not,
let's
you're
put
right,
money on it,
not.
dude. I'm down to put money on that.
It's so easy. Oh my god, the spacey players who think every floaty job is so easy. It's not easy to be Chew with Ice Climbers. It's not easy to be like in general win this matchup. It's just not. It's much easier when Ice Climbers can only hit you with up air, and that's like all they can do.
I don't know, dude. I'm down to put money on it, and if I'm wrong, that's cool. But I don't know.
You're wrong already.
How am I wrong already?
It's insane to say a death grab doesn't help
Wait.
character.
I didn't say that it didn't help. I think it's almost negligible. I didn't say that it is negligible. It's like it almost doesn't matter at all.
Second stock of game 2 was a wobble by Chew. So far, we are at 3 of 6 stocks are wobbles by Chew.
And how did that affect the outcome of the set? Who won?
Chew took games. It went down to the wire, bro.
So is what the Ice Climbers want to take games but never win?
Bro, if you could take it to the end, to the wire against someone like Hungrybox, you had a chance to win.
Dude, I really wish I had sets that I could point to other than Chango versus Fohibro, but Wobbling wasn't on, and it was game 5, and they were like even at stocks the whole time.
Yeah. Fohibro is probably a better player.
That's a really hard thing to determine. That's really hard to determine.
I mean, dog, if they took lasers away from you and you took someone at game 5 last stock and you barely lost, I've been like, with lasers you probably would have won. Don't think it's that hard to say.
Yeah, because I think that lasers have like a pretty direct impact on almost every single every single. This is a terrible. That was a terrible example. There's no.
Folks, how do you not think a death grab has a huge impact? I'm like,
because you can't grab. Right, you can't grab buff. How does it not make sense?
Chew death grab.
Hungrybox.
That's the best player in the world.
Not the best at the matchup. Not the best at the matchup.
Hungrybox.
Let me get Duck in here. Let me get Duck in here and ask who he thinks plays the matchup better. If it's Michael or Hungrybox.
Oh my freaking hell, dude! It doesn't matter. Being able to even have a chance against Hungrybox is enough to say this is important for them.
There's like, I mean, I guess maybe if we're like saying, hey, Puffs or Ice Climbers, if you want to beat Puffs who aren't playing the matchup correctly or like well at all, even though it's really easy to play the matchup, I would say that it's easy. Maybe you don't agree. I think that it's easy.
Hungrybox does not play Jigglypuff well at all.
That's not what I said. I think that he plays the matchup worse than Michael, and I think that he probably does it because he doesn't want to be hated even more than he already is. I think if he literally went out for the Michael strat against every single Ice Climbers player, I think that I think he'd get eaten alive. Third stock of Hungrybox versus Chew was a wobble. Right now at 4 of 7 stocks were wobbles. This is so hard for me because I don't have sets to point to where wobbling was illegal except for this one dumbass set where the stupid Puff didn't play that well and neither did the Ice Climbers player.
Look, I know I'm being a bit hard on you, and I think
That's okay. I'm down.
In a way, I see what you're saying. I just think you are downplaying everything that you deep down know is true.
I don't think that's
I'm trying
true.
to get that part out of you. Dude, there is. What you're saying is it's hard for Ice Climbers to get a grab. I agree with you. Let's just talk about the things we agree with, right?
Yes. Okay.
We both think that removing a death grab nerfs a character. We just disagree on degrees, right?
Yeah, correct.
And you seem to think that Hungrybox is a significantly weaker opponent than Michael. Sorry, I had a hard time getting through that sentence. That was pretty funny.
Dude, come on, dude.
And so therefore, we should only look at Michael sets to determine how.
No, I never said that.
Okay. Finish my sentence for me. How should we determine how important wobbling is in the matchup?
Ideally, we have some empirical evidence to point to with certain controls and different rule sets and
one of the highest level ice climber, arguably the highest level ice climber Puff ever played in.
That's not true.
Major tournament.
That's
Grand
not
Finals
true.
major tournament that's
You can't just
relatively
claim
recent.
that it's the highest level play that's ever happened because Hungrybox is in it.
Then give me a stat that's the highest level it's with wobbling on that's ever happened. Give me something to work with. I'll scroll through the video too, and I'll find some wobbles.
I'll show you like Michael versus somebody. I think Michael plays it better than anybody else in the world.
But you have to give me an ice climber that plays it well too.
He beat Army, dog. I don't know. Is that on Michael versus Army?
Is Army known for his versus?
He's ranked 19th in the world, dog. Are you saying that he's like significantly worse?
First.
Yeah. Wait. Well, Michael's ranked like 40th, and he's beat like number 1 beating Chu is like less significant than me than like number 41 beating number 19.
Look, I just want to go off this topic because Ginger, you're actually giving me an aneurysm. I think this will help the chat. People are saying I don't understand matchup knowledge. I totally understand matchup knowledge. I understand the concept. I just think Hungrybox is so much more difficult opponent than Michael that Michael knows matchup knowledge, and I guarantee you any ice climber would rather play Michael than Hungrybox.
Do you think so?
Hungrybox is Hungrybox.
I'm down to like pull all of the top ice climbers players and ask them, but I don't know if they'd answer in good faith. But I'm down to ask them. Because I have a hard time believing that.
Also, when's the last time? I mean, Hungrybox barely loses ice climbers too, right? So just keep that in mind, right?
Yeah, I think the matchup
never happens.
Exactly. I think that the matchup is really. I think it's bad. I think it's bad either way. I'm not saying that like. Yeah, I said it's almost negligible. I think that it changes a little bit, but I think that Puffs are still gonna like no matter what. Even with wobbling legal, I think that Puff just still destroys ice climbers.
Yes, but matchup percentages matter. It matters. It matters if it's 70-30 or 90-10. It matters.
But the thing is, yeah, I agree if it's like 70-30 and 90-10. I have a problem if it's 70-30 and then like 72-28. Like, I don't really care about that. Like, I think that's a great sacrifice to make for the rest of the community to be happy that wobbling isn't banned, or that wobbling is banned for like. Again, that's what we're disagreeing about. Is like how much it really like impacts this sort of thing, right? That's the core of our thing.
Falco lasers are a noob slayer too, dude. Falco lasers destroy noobs. They have no idea how to deal with it. No one's banned Falco lasers. What's up with that? Now, that's me being... Okay, that's not even real.
I could probably come up with... well,
lasers
are still engaging, and... Yeah.
Are they? I guess for a noob who doesn't know how to wave dash out shield? They're just dead.
I don't think that they all just auto lose to Falco. I also think that Falco, it gets difficult for Falco as soon as you approach even a little bit out of the... So the thing is, ice climbers just transfer from like being a new player to the mid-level extremely quickly. But I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't think that's a good comparison.
They have such a hard time at many other levels. Falcos also go from new player to mid-level, like... Maybe,
I would say probably quicker than most, yeah.
Yeah, just maybe as fast or faster. Falcos like transform. They learn how to press the B button, and they go from a low-level player to a mid-level player. That happens.
Okay, but like the problem is the reason why, because we're talking about people's feelings, right? How a new player would perceive this situation. Wobbling is not interactive at all. If I hit somebody, one of the coolest things about Melee, and I think you'd agree, just take this statement out. We're not even arguing. I think that one of the coolest things about Melee is that even if we're completely on defense, even if we're sitting in a combo, we're interacting with the other person.
Wobbling's lame. I agree with you.
Okay, but so we're talking about how the person feels, right? So if it's lame and the person feels real bad about it, I think that they feel worse if they're getting wobbled than they are getting hit by a Falco laser, right?
Probably, because lasers are like a little nick that you slowly die to, versus wobbling, which feels like more impactful. You have to watch yourself die. So wobbling's lame. It's a horrible mechanic, and Sakurai isn't perfect. God bless.
I agree.
And so I'm not going to disagree with any of that. And I actually see totally why people think it's whack and whatnot. But I also think ice climbers suck, and most of our characters destroy them. And so I hate to say it, but when I think of down the line, what's more annoying? Lasers are more annoying because it's on a good character.
Okay,
it's a big deal.
I think I could ask like most like high level players what annoys them more, like getting wobbled, or like getting hit by Falco lasers. I think I could ask Plup for sure. I think he'd probably say that wobbling's more annoying. I don't know.
but it's lasers are better. It's like you don't think so?
Depending on the matchup.
Or Mr. Falco #1.
Yeah. I think that lasers are
counter to lasers. There's a lot you could say here. And I don't think I'm not here trying to ban lasers. Lasers are cool. And I think lasers sick as fuck. And wobbling I also think is not sick at all. I think it's actually lame as hell. But that's not the counter argument. The counter argument isn't that wobbling is cool and therefore we should all like it. The counter argument is that it drastically changes matchups for a character, and we don't want to take one of the viable characters off the list. And I think some people do. And if that's where your heart's at, that's fine. Like, if people actually want to remove Puff and Ices from the game, and there's clearly people who do, because you hear them say stuff like that.
For sure.
Melee would be better with only fast followers than Marth. You hear them like that kind of crap all the time. Then just say it, Like, I just say, come out there and say, that's the rule set I want. I only want 4 characters.
Yeah.
Or maybe you had Pikachu because Axe is cool, right? I'd argue against it because that's an anti-Marth rule set.
Okay, yeah.
But reality is that people are at this point shamelessly targeting characters, right? This is we're talking about stalling rules, which are like specifically Puff tiebreakers, right? And we're talking about wobbling, which is very clearly a single character targeted thing, and we're trying to decide these things by, as you put it, a utilitarian approach was, how does this make us generally feel, right? It's nonsense, right? Like, what is fair? That's really what it should be put down to. Is a tactic broken? Wobbling is not. It's not that. It's really on a terrible character, so it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter that much.
I don't think that's the only thing that matters.
It's a big part of it, man. It's a big part of it. And yes, if something was so degen that it's ruining the game and we're gonna die, like as in the scene is gonna die.
Yeah.
If it stayed in the game, I'd be right there with you, because you could argue things like Bayo were at that point in Smash 4. You can make an argument. Yeah. I don't even know if that's true, right? Maybe Meta Knight and Brawl you can argue. I don't know if that's true, but the truth is, Ices ain't winning shit. They're not decreasing the growth of our game at all. We've had this on for a decade. It's not happening, right? What's being described isn't happening. And Jigglypuff is really good, but I don't think we need to specifically target the character.
I have a hard time having the wobbling discussion and the Puff discussion at the same time. Because, like, the thing that people do is they put these two things together because they assume that their opponent's main argument is that wobbling is lame, and then Puff is also lame, and so those two things are exactly the same. I don't think I'd ever claim those things to be, like, the same or assume that both of them should be banned if one of them's going to be banned. So I'm just being careful with that. Because a lot of people, like, Leffen does this all the time, and it's so dumb.
Oya says, how does Blur know wobbling isn't hurting the community? Because our best years had wobbling on. We grew just fine. I don't think there is... I'm not going to directly target a character unless I feel like I really feel that character is harming either the top level or some level of the metagame, which is hurting to draw players in. And I don't think Ice Climbers are either prevalent enough, they're a very small percentage of the community, sub 5%, or dominant enough to make that even a possibility, right?
Yeah, so I hear you. One thing that you said when we were talking earlier is, like, let's say that you go to a tournament and wobbling's banned. Like, that affects the ice climbers way more than it affects the other people. Or even if it's legal, it affects the ice climbers way more than it affects the other people. But for every set that ice climbers plays, the other person is also affected, right? So there's always, like, a one-to-one. Like, it affects not only the feelings of the wobbler, but also the feelings of the person playing against them.
Sure.
So, I don't know. I just kind of wanted to clarify that, because I think that, like...
I don't think it's one-to-one, because... look, you'll lose a set. Maybe you lose a set against the Ice Climber. Whatever. You got wobbled a few times. It happens, right? You still have losers. You still have every other tournament. Whatever. This Ice Climber player, it's their entire career. It's everything.
Sure.
Right.
But you realize it's one person, and then for, like, if they go, let's say they win 5 sets, that's not one person who's upset. That's 5 people that are upset now, right? And wobblers seem to at least win 1 set at every tournament they go to. I wonder why. So it's like you're affecting a good amount of people and how they feel. So, like, that's how I'm trying to, like, kind of compute it. It's not like, but I would agree that the Ice Climbers player of Wobbling's band is, like, pretty upset. And I think that, like, I'll also concede that I think that people have terrible mentalities around wobbling. If you see me when I get wobbled, almost all the time, you could go back in most VODs where I'm getting wobbled. I sit there, I nod my head once I see they confirmed it, I mash my controller, I hold the perfect DI to try to live off the top, I try to tech at 120, after that point I hold my DI to try and live, and then I put my head, I shake it up and down after they finished it, because that's also a skill, and then we're on to the next thing. I think, like, if everybody had that sort of attitude towards wobbling where they accept that, like, all right, I have to play within the rule set that's, like, currently happening to me right now.
So why don't you talk about that?
I don't think that they
Why isn't that your natural response? Because honestly,
I'm saying it right now.
Telling the kids to grow up is actually something that needs to be done. Look, here's the truth is you're right. The best solution to wobbling is if we had a patch that took it out of the fucking game and we simultaneously buffed ice climbers in other ways. Give their hammer some more range or something. I don't know.
Sure, yeah.
Right? That would be a better solution. If I was the developer of the game, that's what I'd do.
Mm-hmm.
But
because your goal is to make everybody happy, right? And so this would make the people that were getting wobbled happy because they don't get wobbled anymore, and it makes ice climbers happy because the character's still good.
Yeah, because wobbling sucks. It's degen, and I get it. I understand, right?
Mm-hmm.
But fundamentally, what it comes down to is, do I think that targeting a mid-tier character is good because people are either have poor mentalities around it or can't figure it out or just find it an unenjoyable experience.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that I think can be justified and specifically target a large subset of players who I now see, with it becoming more prominent, quit, rage, or any other thing that adds a lot of negativity to the scene? Mm-hmm. I don't think that's worth it, right? Now, you could say, I think it's worth it because I think our the greater good. Every
mm-hmm.
evil in this world has been done for the greater good, by the way. Now, so that's my personal opinion.
Uh-huh.
But I just disagree. I mean, what else do you want from me? Like, I
hear you.
Hurting ice climber players at this drastically is just not fair. It's just not fair. It's not fair.
Do you think that they changed position on the tier list?
Yes.
Really? Are they, like, below Ganon now?
Maybe. No, Ganon's fucking trash.
Wait, where was Ice Climbers before? I actually don't even know where.
Did I have Ices above Samus? I don't remember. But they're definitely worse than Samus after this.
You think so? I think they... Maybe. I could maybe see that. This is a question.
I don't think it's a maybe.
Man, I had a point that I was going to make. I can't remember what it was.
Mm-hmm.
But you think... Okay, so one thing that I did want to clarify is, like, you keep saying, like, viable or something, and Fat Goku wanted me to say, like, or ask you whether or not you think Ices are wobbling or viable with wobbling. But we still never really, like, pinned down what viable means to either of us, right?
Yeah, I think Ices could win a major tournament with wobbling. And I think they probably actually, and this is the crazy part, I think they probably could without it, if with the right bracket luck, but it requires significantly more bracket luck. The only reason that I think they could with it off with the right bracket luck is because I think that the distribution of players is so like spacey centric that in those matches probably ICs can still combo relatively decently in that with the right bracket you can still do it. But I think if they were in a tournament with like only really good Samuses, Marths, Peach, Puffs, and what have you, they're gonna have a fucking hard time.
Right.
They're gonna have a real hard time. But if they get only Sheiks, Foxes, and Falcos, like it's possible. It's doable.
It's so weird to quantify things like that because you'd have to be fighting against Fox and Falcos that like are still not good at the matchup or something, right? Because we both agree that Fox and Falco win.
Yeah, because melee, right? Like people, you see grand finals and people are bad at the matchup. Like that. So
like Hungrybox versus Chew. Anyway,
do you agree with what I'm saying that they could win majors regardless with either?
It's so hard to say. Like in 2019, do I think an Ice Climbers with wobbling Are we talking like a super major tournament with like all the gods there and like most good players? Or are we talking like a major tournament like Full Bloom? Like where the gods aren't there?
We'd agree with the no gods one no matter what. Let's just go with the super major.
Yeah, so super major, I don't know if an Ice Climbers, even with Wobbling in 2019, could win. Maybe with like the craziest bracket luck. And then without Wobbling, also with the craziest bracket luck. Like I feel like it doesn't change. I feel like
I think it's possible.
I think it changes slightly.
I think with gods, it's like if you run to Muji King Mango in quarters and semis, like
yeah, but you have to win grands. You have to win winners finals and then grands against somebody that made it there. And then Mango would like have to make it all the way back to grands so that you could beat him again, or like
or Axe.
I guess Armada retired, or Axe too.
You could be Plup too, you know.
Yeah, Plup in general I think has a pretty good record against Ice Climbers, right?
But it could be.
But
done.
yeah, no, I hear you. I think it could be done with Wobbling, and I guess it's really hard to quantify or to say like how different that bracket path would have to be. Like, who are they fighting in quarters and semis instead of Mango and Mutaking? Like, they both got upset by different Foxes and Falcos that are worse at the matchup or something? The problem is that the same 5 people have dominated winners like semis of every tournament for the past like 6 years.
Right. So point is that with the right bracket, I think it's possible. If you fight Hungrybox, or if Armada comes back and plays Peach, or you run to the handful of mid-level Icy Slayers, yeah, probably not.
It's
probably very difficult. I think that with Wobbling on, your chances against those Slayers goes up like exponentially. With it off, it's very, very difficult. Just go really hard down.
Yeah, I hear you there. I just wanted to clarify where you kind of feel about that, and I guess I kind of feel a similar way. I'm not sure exactly how much it impacts, but I do remember the other thing that I wanted to say, which was we were talking about like, well, why don't you just start with that? Like, you know, be like, come on, everybody, like, man up. You know, who cares about Wobbling? I have this thing where I think like, I really don't believe that you can just force someone to feel a certain way, and I also think that telling someone to change their feelings is like the most effective way at going about like achieving the highest amount of utility, right? So like pragmatically, like I think the real solution isn't to just be like, come on everybody, like be real positive about Wobbling, it's not that bad, and like try to change their feelings. I think that like if enough people dislike it, and like I don't think that I'm right there with you. I don't think that people should just be like banning it or banning it because like the TO themselves thinks it's lame, or the TO themselves thinks it'll help boost their numbers because they're on the front page of Reddit or something like that. But I think like if enough people feel as though like it's either like a degenerate tactic or for whatever reason they want to ban it, I can't change how these people feel just by telling them to feel a certain way. Like they're gonna dislike it, or they're gonna feel disheartened by getting wobbled, even if I'm sitting behind them like, it's all right, champ, like don't worry about getting that wobble, like go on to the next stock and have a fresh thought, you know? It's like I can't force anyone to feel that way.
So there's a couple things there. First of all, I agree with you if we're strictly talking about feelings. Like if someone just feels bad, like you can't talk someone out of depression, right? Or it's hard, right? But I think there is, when there's a lot of scrubbiness coming into the fray, it's top player voices and top player influences help let people know they're being a fucking scrub. And so when someone tells them, hey, actually, this thing is not broken, and you might feel this way, but let me tell you A, B, and C answers you could do to work around it, maybe they'd be less frustrated, right?
I'd agree, yeah.
So if that was the counter argument, rather than like fueling the fire, then yeah, I think it would work. Right?
Yeah, I could see it having. I was gonna say I could see it having positive impacts for sure, and probably almost exclusively positive impacts. Yeah.
Yes. So there you have it.
There it is.
Like, we all know. Here's the funny thing: is we all know wobbling isn't broken. We all know there's a lot of counterplay. We all know that you can just destroy ice climbers. But instead, what we're spending our time with is talking about how shitty it makes so many of us feel because of this or that or whatever, because it's lame, blah, 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 which it is lame. But, you know, I think it's just not very productive that way, right? Like, the only end game of talking about how lame it is to ban the goddamn thing, and nerf the character. Which, if
Mm-hmm.
that's your goal, go for it. But I think that don't be surprised if your character's next, dude.
Come
Just don't be
on.
surprised.
Come on. This is
No. Don't come on me. That's a slippery slope argument, but the slope is so fucking slippery.
There's
it's literally
no way the
vertical
slope
right now.
is that slippery, dude.
It's vertical right now.
It's not.
It's vertical.
I can't, dude. This is like the Wobbles. Like Wobbles, I think doesn't know how to make a sound argument. I'm willing to say that on my stream. I think that like I listened to him talk about his slope for like 45 minutes, and people were like, I don't really think that sounds realistic. He's like, you don't understand. The game is just gonna be Fox Dittos, but then even people will be pissed about Fox Dittos, so they'll ban chain grabbing, and so it'll only be, you know, they're gonna ban shine spiking next, and then it'll just be foxes who can narrate each other, and you're forced to approach, and the timer's at a 1 minute. Like, dude. He didn't say all that, but it like
no. I mean, like real talk. They won't actually go after Falco because there's too many Falcos.
And Falco's too sick.
That's not why. And Falco is sick. I love Falco. He's but they're not gonna go after that because it's we're talking about tyranny of the majority. You go at the outskirts first, right? It's gonna be ice season. It's gonna be Puff, and then whatever's next.
I don't think that's like. I don't think that's like.
How can you say that when you're watching?
Because I think that if Fox had like an uninteractable grab infinite, I think they'd go after the grab infinite that Fox had too. I don't think it's like Ice Climbers being like the bad guy, and we can cut out a few of them, and like hopefully that helps the game. I think it's like people are like, this seems pretty different from the rest of the game that we're trying to play, and we're like trying to test certain skills in competition. It just doesn't really feel like what we're trying to get at, and so I think the game would be better off without wobbling. I don't think it's like, the mid tier, we can take advantage of him.
The game would be better off without Ice Climbers at a top level. I mean, a lot of people think that way. Like I said, let's do space fast fallers and Mars only. Like when that's the argument, I actually have very little qualms with it. I just disagree with it. I just think that I like the game with Ice Climbers in it more than I like it without it. And so, whatever, Now, nonetheless, I think so. Let's talk about the slope, right? Real
sure.
quick, right?
Yeah.
Because there's people naturally assume slippery slope is a fallacy when it's only a fallacy when you cannot prove a direct correlation between one event and the other. Like you can't prove that. If you can't prove the slope is slippery, then there's nothing there, right?
Sure.
But I'd argue that we have proven that the slope is extraordinarily slippery because we have people doing literal political protests in tournament matches to make points, right? We have people moving from literally it's a week by week thing talking about a new rule set change for a fucking ancient game, right? Which has had like it's the same rule set for like most of its history.
Do you think that like trying to find a better rule set is a bad thing?
Depends.
Okay.
Depends. I think if it's done in the right way, it's not a bad thing.
Okay.
I think it's not been done in the right way. I think it's being done through half-baked arguments on Twitter saying, like pressuring TOs doing it for clout, and us having literally no unification. I can't imagine being a player right now going to a tournament with different rules literally every other weekend. It would suck.
That's my qualm with UCF. I hear you.
Yeah, and you're gonna have things. You're gonna have things that you dislike naturally with the slippery slope. That's the whole fucking point.
So I don't know. I think that like you said that you can prove it because someone's making a stance about wobbling. I don't know how that like proves that like your character's gonna be next, which is what you said. I don't know. I don't think that like Marths are now like be careful because after they do the wobbling and that doesn't help like the melee community, they're gonna say that Fox's shine is too good or Falco's lasers or Marth's grab or Falcon's dash dance. I don't know what Falcon has. Probably nothing. I don't think that you could just say that this like one thing logically follows. I really don't think that you've proven that at all.
First of all, that's not what I'm saying. So
Okay.
I'm not saying they're going to take Marth's dash dance away next. I'm not saying any of that, Ginger. What I'm saying is they're going to move from this to a stalling rule, right? Okay. And then when that does naturally very little or whatever, it doesn't work out, we're going to move on to the next thing. And it's going to be the next thing. It was UCF boxes, this. It doesn't change, right? And you might say, hey, whatever, that's how progress is made. But I don't know if any of this is progress. I don't know if any of this is good for the game. I don't know if any of this is nice. And clearly you seem to think that way too.
The only reason why it's really difficult to have this conversation again is because we don't have like pure like empirical data. Like the only thing that we can really go off of is how people feel. Like when we're talking about like, I don't know if this really helps the game. Well, if people feel as though it does, the people who are playing the game, the active community feel as though this is changing the game for the better, then like I would argue that's enough evidence to say that it is progress.
Yeah, there's no, I have no way of knowing that. What I know is that a couple boneheads on Twitter posted something and got their influenced crowd around it, and that's enough for us to think that's therefore a crowd, a majority. We have no idea. We're not voting.
I agreed with you. Remember, I said I think that certain people are doing it for the wrong reasons, and I think that's really shitty. But I don't think that necessarily this is like... I think that the process might be bad or be bad in certain situations, but I think the outcome is potentially good in terms of people's perception of the game and how good it is or how much they like it or how willing they are to like go to a tournament or something.
I mean, this has all been happening. We've been mired in rules fiascos for about a year and a half now, a little less than that. Mm-hmm. And this has been the sharpest rate of decline the scene's seen since 2014.
I don't think that you could ever provide a causal link between like rules, people being upset about rules, and like also like a decline in the amount of people coming to tournaments, right?
I mean, if certain players literally saying they're quitting because of rules, like Ice Climbers players, is it enough for you? Like, what causal link do you need, bro?
I don't think that I think that probably like 30 people total care that like a couple Ice Climbers players are like quitting the game.
You just made that number up.
How many do you think that it is then? We're both making up numbers.
I'm not making up that people are quitting because of the ban. That's a fact.
Okay, but it's like, how many people quit because of the ban?
How many people? I don't know, but I know some did. I know some did. So you're asking for a causal link, and I'm like, here are people who did it. I don't have an exact number for you, but people did it. And also, what I have is the scene, a graph of the scene's health versus when rule set fiasco started, and they're directly correlated.
They could be correlated, but that doesn't prove causation, right?
Yes, of course it does.
Okay, perfect. I'm just making sure that you recognize that.
But what I'm telling you is that they could be, and that indicates that they could be.
I won't argue with you there. I 100% agree.
Growing the scene. You can't tell me it's growing the scene. You can't tell me people are feeling better and therefore playing more because they're not, right? No, and I can't tell you.
I could.
I honestly don't know how much of this rule set stuff is actually the reason for anything. I think it's, like I said, I think there's far greater things at play. We have Ultimate coming in. We have our lack of tournament streams. We have like production qualities, and there's many other reasons. And I'd be the last one to say that this inane shit is the only reason for progress. But what I do think is it's been a massive distraction, and it's been very frustrating. I also know that it's taken the hearts of community leaders like out of it, and I'm not really even referring to myself. I think people are just like frustrated with trying to TO or do anything in the scene. It feels like doing anything unified in the Smash community is like actually impossible.
Right.
I think it is when it's all people talk about. We don't get to talk about the real issues, the real things that matter, that actually fucking change things. And so we've been mired by we've been wasting our time. I think we've been wasting our time.
I 100% agree with you. And this goes back to like the original point that I brought up, that I think that the Smash community, although I think has the ability to tackle multiple problems at once, is very bad at doing it. So we've been distracted by dumb shit like this that really don't matter that much, or could like, you know, it doesn't matter as much as other things potentially. And I think we'd both agree that there are things that matter more than this wobbling ban, right? So one thing that I did just want to clarify is that I think that I could say, although I can't prove, because I really can't prove any of this because I don't have any scientists collecting data or some bullshit, is I think that I could say that like the wobbling ban is like a positive thing for the community and people are feeling better about the game and like going to tournaments, because I could say that there might have been a larger decline if this wasn't the case, right? But we both can't really prove either side of that coin, right?
No. I don't think either of us could prove either side of the coin, but I think that I have more data points is the only difference. I have genuine people quitting, and I have genuine people raging, and I have genuine sentiment.
I
that
could,
you make
I probably could for you if you wanted me to. I could use my clout, or also just ask different scenes for people that quit because they didn't like getting wobbled. I bet there's a few, maybe even probably outnumbers the amount of people who quit because wobbling was banned.
That. Now you just made some shit up.
I did make that shit up, but I think
you just made that shit up hardcore.
But the thing is, this isn't something that I think I could be biased in my data. I either ask somebody whether or not they quit because of like wobbling or not,
I think your following is biased. I think polling Ginger's following is usually biased.
Sure. So like I could do this in a better way.
But regardless of that, look, dude, this sort of stuff. I think the larger point is that it's a distraction, right? And for context, like I've almost made a vow to myself to not give a shit about rule set stuff. I just have a hard. I only come on shows like this to talk about it because I feel like I have to get it off my chest sometimes because I spend my days reading through bullshit and wading through it. And the reason why I feel like for me I try to focus away from it is because, like you said, I don't think this sort of stuff. I think the biggest issue of this stuff is that how much of it serves as distraction from the actual game, from the actual growth of the scene, the real issues that matter. That's probably the biggest problem of all, and I don't want to spend my time on it, especially since I don't even know how much I can affect it anymore. Like I think the Smash community is more than happy at this point. Well, they're not happy about it, but they people care. There's a handful of things in the issues in the community which people care about so much. I'll fight you to death about it. Right? They will fight you to death about it. And so, yes, I value a unified rule set a lot. I care a lot. But I don't think it is within my power to get every TO on board on it or every player on board on it. And I don't think people even want me to. Right? So for me, it's like, I think this stuff is a distraction. I think that individual TOs and little warlords will run different rule sets for a very long time now. Unfortunately, we had a unification and we had systems that were built for it. But look, if I can't change it, then like I'm literally talking to the wind sometimes, right? So
yeah,
there's bigger issues at hand.
I hear you. I do think that progress is important, and I think that hopefully you'd agree that like I was talking about this on my stream yesterday, so some people will think this is redundant, but being uncomfortable is a byproduct of growth. I think that growth is near impossible without being uncomfortable. So I think we're kind of in an uncomfortable state right now where potentially we're trying to find the best solution. And maybe one day we reach that solution. We find like the best game where everyone's the happiest and everybody can play the character that they want. But like for the time being, we're pretty uncomfortable. And I think that's like something a lot of people don't handle well, which is why like you see declines in like people attending tournaments and blah, 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 blah.
I think it's a great, beautiful, optimistic way of looking at things that I don't know if I agree with.
Okay, that's fine.
The reason I say that is because I think that our uncomfortableness is actually just negativity, and I don't see us being pointed in a direction for growth at all. I see numbers going down, and I think that something drastic needs to be done to change it. I genuinely think that if drastic changes don't happen within the next like 2 years, very soon, we're not in a good shape in 2 years. And I mean, not just us. I actually think Smash community as a whole, because where Melee goes, actually, Ultimate kids don't like to think about this, but the general Smash scene goes. Like a lot of the TOs are Melee guys.
Yeah.
I think we are at a crux point, which is why I care about this so much. Is because I'm like I'm putting up red sirens, and then I want people to understand that talking about this stuff is how we improve it. And talking about the real issues and talking about where we need to go is how we improve it. Because we're at a very pivotal moment, right? We still have enough of an audience to be able to turn it around. I think
Definitely.
We're still at least at that point, but I don't know if we will be in 2 years.
Yeah, I think it's really hard because I don't like seeing people have these discussions. I think even posing the question, is Melee dying, gives people the sense that Melee like could die or is kind of dying, or maybe is there reason to think that it's dying? I feel like the community as a whole like gets kind of scared whenever you bring up this concept, and I think that like kind of fear could be like pretty detrimental. I think like a lot of times when I was talking about like the responsibility of like being someone that's an influencer is like talking about things in a productive way and also a way that you can communicate to the community like without them being afraid, right? And so like I think it's incredibly important to talk more about what you said, like in the latter of your statement, which is, I think that we still have enough of an audience to turn things around. Although we're declining, I think that we still have such a great fan base. Smash is such an amazing game. Melee is maybe one of the most in-depth games of all time. New people still are playing this game. Like, it's awesome to talk about. There's really good things to talk about, and I think like emphasizing. Yeah.
Let's talk positively, because I think because first of all, we're the sickest community of all time, so talking positively shouldn't be hard for us.
Right.
And I think what people really need is hope, and what they really need is optimism. If you read Moki's statement, for example, about why he's quitting, one of his things is he seeing the scene decline, and he was really hoping to become a pro player, and he doesn't know if that's a real option anymore, and blah blah blah. Like, and therefore that's one of the reasons he was quitting. And that's like, this is what I'm talking about, right? Where people read negativity, and they read that subtext of potential decline, and they make personal decisions based off of it, right? And that's natural.
Yeah.
So what people really need is optimism. What people really need is a plan forward, right? And what they really need is like basically thinking about, okay, so what are the things for me to get excited about? What are the good things that are coming and down the pipe that really makes this thing go? And that's like stuff I'd be passionate to work on, and I'd be passionate to make happen. And that's where I strongly agree with your statement about influencers, like, and how that sort of positivity is very needed right now. Unfortunately, negativity tends to get more likes and favorites and retweets.
Yeah.
So that's just the way social media works.
I also think it's not helpful that the people with the largest amount of outreach, it seems, in Melee seem to be some of the most negative. I could be wrong on that, but it seems like especially Leffen's just the best example of it, has one of the largest outreach like in the Smash community as a whole, and he's just spouting negativity all the time.
Yeah. I mean, we're friends, but it's undeniable that my boy goes around and just talks shit.
Yeah.
And maybe sometimes it's hard because he's right a lot of the time. He just puts it in the most negative possible way. And so it's tough, because it's not like Mucha King had large periods of negativity, for example, but his brand was so silly that I think people just naturally discredited everything he ever says. Right?
Yeah.
Like he might have a large following, but he had a large following of people who don't really listen to him. Who don't necessarily value his opinions to that level. And I say that with all due respect to Jason. I love Jason. Right? He's a silly dude.
Definitely.
But Levin, I think that most people at this point understand that he's right a lot of the time. Like a lot of the time. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. So when he says something negative, it's like a genuine critique, and like go tell those TOs, or go tell those or whatever. And so it's validated, right? It's negativity that is viewed as justified.
Yep.
Which is how he views it as well. So I'm not saying Leffen's killing Smash, because it's not true, but I do think that those he doesn't value his responsibility like he probably should, as I've explained to him many times. And I think that other people, it'd be much better if we approach this in a much more positive light, because I think, like, dude, the solutions are right in front of us. I've changed my mentality, Jimmy.
Okay.
And I take fault in this. I think there's one person who's at fault for Smash decline, it's me. If I would pin it on one person.
Damn.
Yeah, because I think I had the wrong mentality for growing the scene. There was a time, I'd say like 4 years ago, and it slowly transitioned away, where I thought that basically we had grown as far as we could without direct publisher support or without outside support, and that because our business model, which was solely based on ticket sales, was hard to scale past what we had before. Usually when you go to bigger venues, your prices actually go up exponentially.
Right.
And so you'd have to make it up in other points of sale, like sponsorships or broadcasts or what have you. We would need outside funding, or especially publisher support, in order to get where we need to go, right? So I worked very diligently on improving our Nintendo relationship over time and all that. And I think actually a lot of that was good work, right? But I think I missed my mentality was wrong, right?
Okay.
Here was what was wrong about Ginger.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
90% of our problems are self-inflicted, and they can and that 90% can be fixed.
Great.
Uh, and so for me, I feel like um, I didn't focus on that 90% enough, and I think none of us did in that time. We didn't think about like, hey, um, sure, the 10%, which is things like accessibility or the fact that our game never released in China,
Right.
that's unfixable. But like everything else, super fixable, right? The fact that we run really bad formats and players go 0-2, losing to and having bad tournament experiences, like the fact that we have no general like infrastructure around our scene that leads to a common storyline, the fact that like all those other things are very fixable. And so, yeah, I think that is that. I think that to me is the change of mentality that I hope that, first of all, not only that I made, but I hope that I can find a way to trickle down to the rest of the scene. Because for the most part, I think people are in the doom and gloom where grassroots can only go so far mentality. And I think it's actually incorrect.
That's great. That's really good to hear. And I think like since you're one of the most knowledgeable people like on the subject, I think it's great to hear that you have a good mentality about it. Do you have like any practical applications of like problems that you think you'd be able to solve with like a practical solution that you could maybe give us?
Yes, I think all of it can be solved within 2 years. Like literally, I think Smash can be revolutionized very quickly.
That'd be sick.
It'd be sick. I know. And I think a lot of it's technological. A lot of it's like through community building. The worries I have with a lot of my solutions is that if we can't really get everyone around a rule set, can we actually get people to go for a common good? I'm not sure, but I think it's possible. So like the main thing I want to get across is that the mentality of work grassroots and there's nothing we could do about it is, I think, a large portion of what is causing everything. Are you?
I'm doing some stuff. Yeah, I'm still live. My sub notification was super loud and drowning you out, so I just deleted it from all my scenes.
Yeah, but like things like, I think net play was good for the scene in so many ways. I think like things like having, Smash GG be able to be a hub for player data or things like Fizzy. These are all like things that help grow the scene, as well as like managing our tournament landscape and finding the right tournaments and partners and sponsorships to make it all go. A lot of that stuff we could do right now. We don't need to wait on anything, and we're not capped by anything that way. I would use the CS:GO community as our model, right?
Yeah,
where they did it without a publisher, and they became the biggest esport in the world for a long time.
they're still huge.
They're still huge. They're second biggest now, I'd say, in the league. But they actually didn't get Valve money until like not that long ago, right? Like that wasn't
right.
The CS:GO majors and things wasn't a thing for a long time. Companies like ESL like were built from the ground. They started grassroots and they slowly got an Intel sponsorship and they slowly improved their event quality and all that. Like and then it trickled to everything else. Like it happened, right? And we just don't think of ourselves in the same way. We don't think of ourselves nearly as holistically as they did.
We don't have that type of unification either, right? Like ESL was like a huge part of like unifying like the CSGO scene, and like ESL events were like very important, right? And we kind of just have different TOs hosting different events, potentially different rule sets and like different places, and nothing seems connected.
So CS:GO only gets Valve money because Valve gets a ton of money from game microtransactions. Yeah, right now they do. But like I think about the first like decade, 15 years of CS, they were smaller than us at some point, smaller than we are currently, at some point, and they got all the way there, and sure, then some Valve money got sprinkled on top. But the truth is they were already in stadiums, they were already kind of there, on its own, without skid money, without all that stuff, and so we could do it. Right, and other scenes did it too. It's not just CS, right? But they're probably the best example of one that did it literally on its own. And so, I think what it takes is all of us to be a little bit more business minded. I mean, the TOs and the leadership, like, all of us to be little like to stick to our identity and our hashtag core values, but to think about the steps needed to like blow this shit up, because I think it's totally possible. We're barely marketing our events right now. Like
Right.
SmashCon did a few radio ads and like a few internet ads, and they get like 4,000 attendees. Why is no one else doing that?
Yeah.
Like it's so ridiculous how much inefficiencies and stuff there is in the Smash scene. So often we come with a grand innovation and it gets used at one tournament and not at everything else, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
very few things. Like I mean, I could literally list it on one hand. Gets put down scene wide, so much of our effort gets wasted.
Mm-hmm. It's a really good point to bring up. That's awesome. I'm glad that you're optimistic about it, because yeah, I guess I just don't know like all these practical solutions. Like I think about the problems and I'm just like, man, I don't really know how I'd fix that. It seems like we need to be unified, or like you were saying when you were describing like kind of your negative attitude towards like grassroots as a whole, and like how do we grow past like we have to get our money from ticket sales, and like you were talking about, when you grow in venue the price goes up exponentially. Like when Rob moved to what is it, the Kobo Center from that hotel that we were at, it's like that's a huge price jump, dude. Like even the internet at fucking Kobo Center costs like $1,000 for like a meg or whatever. It's like it's incredibly expensive to run those events, and like I thought, like what do you do, just raise the ticket prices, or like have a venue that you can hold enough people, but like you still have to get that interest somewhere. Like I don't know. It's definitely tough, but I think that like being unified and all that, having a positive outlook and like having those sorts of solutions would help a ton.
I know literally exactly what to do, Ginger. That's a crazy part. I'm still not sure if anything I'll do will succeed, but only because I think that getting everyone behind solutions is required. So here are the actual answers. Here they if you're like, so ticket sales cannot be your only source of revenue, right? Because you can't raise ticket prices because attendance goes down. We've literally experimented this on 100 times, right? Basically, attendance actually goes down. People always say the statement like, well, I don't think anyone would mind $5 extra.
Yeah.
Like it's no big deal. Actually, they do. Like it doesn't look like they do, but it's actually super correlated. You don't lose that many people, but you'll lose actually a few. It's so weird. It's like supply and demand. Laws of economics genuinely work.
Right.
You increase it by $10, you lose a larger percentage. There's an optimal number basically.
Yeah, there's a term in economics for this, right? I don't know. It's like a price point. You like set something to a certain price where like people can afford it, but it's expensive enough to where you're getting the max amount of money. Equilibrium. Yep. Perfect.
Yes. And we figured it out. It's some number between $60 and $70, basically.
Gotcha.
Is like pretty much the max you can do before you start losing a lot, right? There's cases where your brand value is higher, like a Genesis, where you can charge a little more, or an Evo.
Right.
But most tournaments you can't go that high. Like some can barely pitch past 50 without like losing a large audience, right? So no, it matters. Of course you have to get your brand and things better so that you can start charging like PAX prices. They charge like $200, $300 or Coachella prices or whatever. But we're not at that point, right? We've seen that when we increase it much farther, people stop going. So we can't. So yeah, ticket sales can't be your only source of revenue. So what are other sources of revenue that other esports use that the rest of us can use and Smash can use to really change the game? So the one everyone brings up is sponsorships. That's natural. Problem is none of our content's valuable at all. People always think that the reason Smash doesn't get sponsorships is because we're an old game or it's on CRTs, all this crap. It's not true. Don't listen to any of that. I've done lots of sponsorship sales. I just did a PAX Arena event with Magic. Like we had a big Discover sponsorship. It has nothing to do with any of that.
Right.
All that really matters is eyes, and we have eyes. We have more eyes than most things that get sold in the industry. That's not what's going on. If we can't get a headset sponsor, or if we can't get a gaming PC sponsor, we can get some other type of sponsor. We can do it. The real problem is none of our content's valuable. So what that means is no one's investing in production value enough to make brands feel safe about putting their brand on screen. So I have experience in my job and through other things of selling large sponsorships and being able to like convert large brands to esports products. Now, esports products which get far less viewership than anything Smash does.
Right.
But I can't tell you right now that I could take those same brands and bring them to Smash, because I think that the Smash TOs and productions would fail. Like I think they would fail discovers the world. They wouldn't do the obligations and the ad density and the right placement of brands and all that stuff. They wouldn't manage the client to the level of the detail. It's literally a quality assurance thing.
Really?
Right? Yes, that's a big part of it. And second of all is none of the brand packages are good enough, right? So sponsoring Genesis, as sick as it is actually not that valuable, right? Because Genesis is not that big.
Right.
All of Smash is pretty big, but Genesis less so, right? And so we have to make brand packages that are actually valuable to sponsor. You know, this is very simple, basic stuff, but that's what it would take. Broadcast rights. Most esports get it. We don't get any because we're all on different channels. That matters. We don't do anything with subscriptions. Like none of our main tournament broadcasts are really pushing subs like I think they should be, right? Why aren't there like a shit ton of sub perks, right, on VGBC or any other otherwise that are really out there that really help you out, you know? That would be huge. Our crowdfunding is not unified. Everyone has their own little Smash GG tournament page, but that's not unified. Why? Right? Like all this stuff. We know Smashers want to support the scene and spend money, but we're just not giving them the way to do it. So those are the answers, Ginger. There's a lot more answers.
Yeah.
That I have to all the problems, but the point I'm trying to make is that it can all be fixed, but it takes people working together. And that's the thing I'm terrified about is people working together in Smash Brothers. I actually, dude, it's silly, but I'm actually terrified about it.
I know. I hear you.
I don't know if people are able to work together. It's really, really hard.
So do you think, like, for example, if we're trying to set up like a brand package for like a sponsor to want to be a part of, right? Like you said that like investing in Genesis is like, it's not really profitable for a sponsor because like Genesis isn't that big. It's like one tournament that happens over the course of a weekend. And like, what does a sponsor really get out of it by like investing in this, right? Do you think that like having a circuit that would like combine these things and be like, look, if you want to sponsor our events, like Genesis, Big House, blank, 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 like all of these things are kind of intertwined, and we'll market your product throughout all of these, and it'll be unified on like one stream or whatever that you can be confident in and will at least achieve the numbers that you want. Here's the data. Is that like something that you're... both know,
like anyone who's been in the scene for a long time can speak to how good an idea a circuit would be for the scene. It would change everything.
Right.
It literally the 90% of problems I'm talking about would get solved hilariously quickly.
Yeah.
And it would take a few years when I say quickly, but regardless, slowly it would happen. The reason it hasn't happened so far is because it takes a lot of upstart costs, basically. To get everyone on board, you have to like, you know, first of all, pay them or make some sort of a portion agreement or something. And also you got to like pay for league operations costs. And you got there's a lot of costs that go into running a league. This is why publishers are really the ones who often do it in the FGC. Like their community never got it off the ground themselves either. But nonetheless, like, yes, absolutely. Like if we could find a way to get that shit off the ground and then support it, like, holy crap, what we could do with it. It would be insane. Right. Because then we could just take it from there. Like it'd be nuts. And I don't think, you know, you'd have to dilly-dally and worry about a lot of the other things. I think the main thing to make that a project like that work is to get everyone into it, you know, or even to get everyone to sacrifice, right? If there isn't enough money to start with, are people willing to lose money for a year or two for the greater good? Right now, I think the answer is no. But might be what it takes, you know?
Yeah, I think it's about in communicating like why this is valuable, right? And like, Melee is sick. The community is really good. It's a benefit to all of you for this to happen. So like communicating that, especially as an influencer, is important. It's kind of going back to that.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's all solvable. Like there's no reason why Capcom can do this and Tekken can do this and we can't. There's no fucking reason.
Right.
There's literally no reason. Nothing stopping us. And except ourselves and our own inability to work together. And it's terrifying that way.
One thing that I was talking to VGBC when I was over in Virginia for the script, and I talked to them about a lot of like community issues, kind of like the discussion that we're having right now. And I don't want to like misquote them, but I remember them talking about how like One of the reasons why a circuit hasn't happened is because we've all just kind of been waiting for Nintendo to give us like the sponsorship, like the startup for this circuit, and it doesn't really feel like it's happening. So people don't feel like they have to unify. They're just kind of like, well, Nintendo will just like do it eventually, hopefully, and like.
Do you want Nintendo to do it, Ginger? And do you think they're going to do it for Melee?
No.
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 And what are we talking about? We're like fucking. We're 18 years in. That's like like anytime now.
Yeah, exactly.
18 years in, and besides that, like again, this is where I take fault. Where like I thought in those similar lines where I'm like, look, if we just continue to grow, we'll be unignorable, and we'll be able to continue fostering a relationship. They'll understand us in time, right? And I think that the relationship has gone a lot better, and those guys are actually great people. Like for the most part, like just really solid, great people that work at Nintendo, like just good people. But I love our independence. I love the fact that we run our own shit. We're able to do what we want for the most part, and I love the fact that we're able to do things our way, right? Like it's a big deal, and so I don't want to necessarily hand over the keys to the car in any fashion. I even think being smaller without handing over the keys might even be preferable in that way.
But larger than we are now, right?
Yeah, if we're larger than we are now, but it's not owned and operated by us, are we still happy? Is the question I'd have.
Right.
And I think probably not, actually. Because I strongly doubt that we'd hit the heights that we could if we did it on our own, right? Because we've hit these heights because of our independence and because of our own thriftiness and all that. And so, like, I think the ideal solution is if we did it ourselves and we did the plays ourselves. And I think waiting around is a horrible mistake. We've waited around too long. Now, can we get it all together? Will people work together? That's the problems I face every day. And unfortunately, I don't know. I always try for things like that, but again, getting Smashers and Smash TOs unified around anything, you can't even get a rule set. Dude, it's a problem.
I hear you.
People legitimately like do not like we're so far away from people thinking about the greater scene, and not instead they just think about their own events. That like I don't know if we can get them there, right? Like it's tough.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, hopefully it'll pan out. I see that some people in the chat, like there's just a bunch of people saying that like, oh, if we have a circuit, the end is Summit, that would be so cool. I feel like Summit's kind of its own thing. I think its brand is really strong. Maybe like a Summit type of event, but I feel like Summit has this like lax vibe to it. I feel like if there's like some sort of ending to a circuit, I don't know if it'd be Summit. At least that's how I feel about it. A Summit-like event.
There's ways to do it. And I'm confident that we could do it really well. But again, it's the hard part about this. I think the thing that would be the game changer is if everyone comes together. Because and they stick together too. I think keeping people like I just see a scenario, and it's like every other unification project that's ever been done in Smash, where one little thing goes wrong and everyone just tears it all fucking down. And I don't know, Ginger. Like I don't know if people would be quote unquote responsible with their influence in that respect. We just aren't. Like we're just I shouldn't have a crisis of confidence in the scene ever, because I think that the scene's incredible. But I'm worried that people literally don't understand the how much sacrifice or unification would be required to do the things that we need to do, and therefore they see one little problem and then it doesn't happen. So yeah, I mean, if you want the honest answer, the reason we haven't fixed 90% of our problems is because we're in our own way. and I don't know if I have the answers for you. If I'm the guy who can fix it, or if anyone can fix it, because the task of unifying Smash Brothers is fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, I hear you.
And that's our problem. That's actually our problem. It's silly. We're in our own way at all times.
I gotcha. Well, it's good to hear you clarify some points on that, and really good to hear you at least talk about it. And like, I just want to clarify for everybody, just because we do want to talk in a positive way. It's like you are concerned that it's maybe you don't know if how well people are going to work together, but it's not impossible, right? These people, like the Smash community, rises to a lot of really important situations where like we have to put up or shut up, right?
No, I think it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for sure. But all I'm saying is that it's possible, but that's going to take all of us to do it, you know?
Yeah, I gotcha.
So, yeah, and a whole boatload of money. So we'll figure out, we'd have to figure out a whole bunch of steps.
Right. Well, yeah, I appreciate you talking about that. Last thing, before you go, I have this theory. And this is just a fun little thing that we can talk about. I have this theory that community perception of how good a top 8 is directly correlates with whether or not the lights are on or not.
Do you think the lights are on mean? What does that mean?
At a tournament, when the lights are on during top 8, it's the least hype thing I've ever experienced. Like every single time the lights are off.
You need the lights off.
Thank you. Like, I don't know if they can't do it because it's like a fire hazard or something. That's my only assumption. There's
some venues which don't let you do it.
I know that Rob has said that he doesn't want to turn the lights off because it impacted like the quality of the photography that happened. Dude,
that also is true.
I hear that, but like, do you see the pictures that like come out of Genesis? Like, and the stage, the lights are off and shit's flashing at you. Everybody's getting wild in the crowd because nobody can be seen. I think that's like Melee at its core was like Big House 4. The lights were off. People were going crazy. The first Genesis, right? Like Genesis 1 and 2, lights are off. Shit's intense. Mango jumps in the crowd, throws his shirt. It's insane.
Can I do a related like Blur, almost ridiculous spooky ghost theory?
Yeah, of course.
I think people look at it the wrong way. They think their tournament is unfairly judged because they got unlucky because they got a bad top 8.
Yeah.
Or whatever. But in my experience, you give Melee a stage and you run a good tournament and it always pulls through. Yeah. Literally, always. And so often, the worst occurrences in Melee history are because the tournament was shit.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Everyone's in a bad mood. The stakes aren't high. Like, the environment isn't feeling good. The lead up to that point wasn't so good.
I hear you.
Like, the match, all of that was, like, sort of out of funk. The stage isn't hype. And so we have a crap top 8. Mm-hmm. But why are all the Genesis always, like, fucking bomb? Because people practice for months for it.
Yeah.
The stage is amazing. The environment is just electric. And then people go out there and they fight for their lives.
Yeah.
And when people are fighting for their life in Melee, every matchup looks good.
That's true.
You know, like when people are really out there trying everything for the win,
mm-hmm.
the game's incredible. It doesn't get better than that. But when all these other external factors start creeping in, then yeah, often it doesn't end up the way we want it to. And so I always flip it around on TOs or whoever who say, "Oh, I just, what am I supposed to do? I got this, I got the short end of the stick."
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I don't know, man.
I think you could have made your tournament better.
Maybe you could have made your tournament better, bruh. Maybe you could have put the lights off.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
I hear you on that one. I'm right there with you. All right, that was the Crimson Blur. Do you want to make any shout-outs? Do you have anything you want to say in closing? Hit me with it.
I know we spent the first half yelling at each other about wobbling, but I really don't care about that. The more important thing to get out of this is the second half, I think, which is that some sacrifices have to be made. We have to make some big decisions, and we need some leadership. I have been, if I'm supposed to be a community leader, I'm not even know if I am anymore. I think I've done like a fucking F- job, and so for me, like, and that's because my job isn't even Smash Brothers anymore. It's lame. I think that we need to turn it around, and we need to to start thinking a little bit more positively. Never doubt the power of positive mentality.
That's
Never
what I'm
doubt it.
saying.
Never doubt it.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so it's important, guys.
definitely. I think I can speak for the Smash community and everybody in my chat that's saying that we appreciate you and all of the work that you've ever done for Smash and the work that you still do. And I also appreciate you. No, come on. They love you. Okay, I promise they do. If this self-deprecation is going to help you somehow come out more positive in the end, I'm all for it, but we love you,
I say
okay?
this with a bit of manipulation. I'm not trying to get people to feel sorry for me. I actually feel like I just judge myself as fairly as I can, and I feel like I haven't been doing well by my obligations. I have the talents. I know things. And I've been given the opportunities to have the experiences I have in Smash Brothers to be able to say things about the industry that most people just do not have access to. I should be using that for our greater good. I haven't been. I'm sorry. Hopefully I can change that in time and finally enter my prime. But it's you guys aren't going to get me away from that. I want to make some changes.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on the show, and I'll talk to you later. Okay, man.
All right. See you, man.
See ya.